this. I'm going to tell people how to eliminate addictions, how to eliminate stress, depression, phobias, addictive urges, and any type of trauma, grief, mental anguish, or what have you. Years ago, I met a guy by the name of Roger Callahan. Dr. Roger Callahan was a psychologist in Beverly Hills. And as a psychologist, he was treating patients with a bunch of different psychological disorders. Could be stress or anxiety. Some people have uncontrollable urges to eat when they're not hungry. They had anxiety. Some had depression. Some went through major mood swings. They had anger issues, grief issues, and various phobias, maybe to spiders or snakes, or phobias of water, phobias being around large groups of people, phobias of elevators, fear of heights, etc. And I'm going to tell you the story, and I'm going to give you the cure for any type of addictive urge. And if you're listening, if you have an addictive urge, let's say you're a cigarette smoker, and you don't have a cigarette for a while, you begin to, you're climbing the walls. You have to have a cigarette. You have an uncontrollable urge to smoke. Some people have an uncontrollable urge to eat when they're not hungry. It's an uncontrollable urge. Some people have stress, panic attacks, anxiety, fears, phobias, depression. There is a way to cure this. So Dr. Roger Callahan had a patient that he was treating who was phobic of water. And over the years of being a psychologist, Roger would go to all these psychiatric and psychological conventions talking to his peers. And what amazed him was his peers, all the psychologists and psychiatrists pretty much said the same thing. That they treated patients using every psychological method that they were taught in school and every psychiatric method, including drug therapy, but nothing really worked. This is one of the best kept secrets in the psychiatric and psychological world. There's a great book you should read called Psychiatry, the Ultimate Betrayal by Bruce Weissman. It exposes the history of psychiatry and psychology. But Dr. Callahan said he was upset that he was spending so much time with patients using everything that he knew and his peers knew, and nothing really seemed to really help. Nothing really helped at all, especially with phobias. He really couldn't get anybody cured of phobia or cured of panic attacks or cured of anxiety or stress. Maybe manage it a little bit, but nobody could be cured. People had addictions, uncontrollable urges to smoke. He couldn't cure them at all. And he studied everything from hypnosis and rapid eye desensitization and cognitive therapy. He went around the world attending lectures and meeting people who had developed new techniques and therapies, only to find that nothing really, really worked. Well, one of the trainings he went through was on acupuncture and acupressure that talked about there are certain points on the body that relate to particular organs or areas of the body. For example, under the eye was a point that went directly to the stomach area or the solar plexus. The side of the hand went to the large intestine. So different parts of the body in acupuncture related to meridians where energy flowed, which ended up or related to particular organ parts or areas of the body. So one day he was treating this patient for phobia of water, and he had treated her for 2 years. And she got to the point where she could sit in the chair and look at Roger's swimming pool outside. But she still was uncomfortable, but she couldn't get close to the water. And as Roger was treating her on this particular day, he said, "Why don't you look at the water and tell me how you feel?" And the woman grabbed her stomach and says, "Oh, I just feel horrible." And Roger said, "Do you feel horrible in your stomach?" And she said, "Yeah, it's a sick feeling right here, like right around the solar plexus area." And Roger remembered his training that under the eye was a point, an acupressure or acupuncture point that went via a meridian directly to the stomach or the solar plexus. So he said, "Why don't you just tap under the eye and see what happens?" So she began to tap. And in a couple seconds, she said, "It's gone, doctor, it's gone." He said, "What's gone?" She said, "The feeling in my stomach, it's gone." She jumped up out of the chair and ran there was glass doors that went to the swimming pool area. She opened up the doors and ran toward the swimming pool, and Roger, of course, screamed, "Stop! You can't swim!" And she stopped at the pool, turned around with a big smile, and said, "I know I can't swim, but doctor, it's cured. I'm cured. It's gone. The feeling's gone." And Roger was amazed. So he began to use this therapy on other people, and it didn't work. It only worked on a few. He then started researching this whole area that perhaps energy blockages was causing phobias, fears, depression, or addictive urges. And he developed what's called thought field therapy. He's written several books about it. He's trained thousands of people around the world to use this. It is the most effective cure for any phobia or addictive urge you could ever imagine. In virtually 5 minutes, it cures you permanently of phobias. It can cure you of depression, anxiety, stress, fears, virtually any type of addictive urge. He's worked with heroin patients, drug addicts, cigarette smokers. It is unbelievably amazing. When we come back after the break, I'm going to tell you more about this and a story about when he was appearing on CNN. Stay with me.
Officially headquartered in the heart of America, but broadcasting to you today from the heart of Europe, this is a very special edition of the Kevin Trudeau Show.
We're back. Kevin Trudeau here. Everything they don't want you to know about, and the government definitely does not want you to know about this. They sued me for sharing this information, but I'm doing it anyway. I'm talking about Roger Callahan's thought field therapy technique, which gets rid of phobias, fears, addictions. It is the most mind-boggling breakthrough therapy which can eliminate blocked patterns and free you up so that you can have, be, or do whatever you want. And I particularly brought this up about cigarette smoking, so I want to talk about addictions. Number one, this therapy, thought field therapy, cures, and I use the word cure, which means it's permanently gone, cures you of phobias, cures you of stress and anxiety, panic attacks, any type of fears, depression. If you have grief, let's say a loved one just passed away suddenly and you're feeling horrible, this treatment can eliminate the horrible feeling. You still will miss the person that passed away or had a tragedy, but you don't have an uncontrollable negative emotion. That's what it cures you of, an uncontrollable negative emotion, which is really empowering. Now, in relation to addictions, this gets rid of addictive urge. Roger was on CNN. The host was a woman who was talking to Roger about addictions. And Roger said, yeah, this can get rid of cigarette addictions. People sometimes have addictions to certain foods. And it can eliminate the addictive urge so you don't have an uncontrollable desire anymore. You're in control of your life as opposed to this addiction or urge controlling you. And she says, what if a person's addicted to chocolate? And Roger smiled and said, are you addicted to chocolate? She goes, yes, I eat chocolate every day. He said, do you have any chocolate on you right now? She goes, of course I do. In my purse, I carry it with me all the time. He says, why don't you take some out? Let's do a little experiment. So right on the air live, she pulls out the chocolate. He says, why don't you open up the chocolate and imagine how wonderful and delicious it would taste. And she looks at it, and you can see her face change, her breathing changed. So Roger says, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want that chocolate? She goes, oh, 10. You really got my urge up. He says, why don't you smell it and imagine how luscious and delicious it's going to taste when you eat it. And she smelled it, and again, her face contorted, her breathing changed, and she started going into this state, which is, it was really interesting to see. And he said, what's your urge now on a scale of 1 to 10? She goes, it's a 15. He says, okay, great. Let's use this technique during the break, and then we'll come back. So they called for a break, and he used the thought field therapy technique, which is a little bit more in-depth than what I described because he had perfected it at this point. They came back after the break, and Roger said, okay, we did the technique. Where is your urge now to eat that chocolate? She said, I can't believe it. It's gone. I don't have any urge. He says, well, would you like some chocolate right now? She says, no, I don't want it. He said, why don't you pick up the chocolate and smell it and imagine how wonderful and luscious it's going to taste? She did, and she said, I can't believe it. It's almost disgusting to me at this point. I have no interest at all in eating this chocolate. A woman called up on the show and said to the host, "What did he do to you during the break?" And she said, "Well, why do you ask?" And the caller said, "Because your whole face looks so relaxed, you look 10 years younger." So this technique is so powerful, it can eliminate addictive urge. Roger worked with heroin addicts, cigarette smokers. I was on Value Vision, which was one of the shopping channels up in Minnesota. I think the name now is Shop MSNBC. So I was on Value Vision, and I was talking about this addiction breaking system before the FTC sued me about it. And I went outside. It was in the middle of winter. You couldn't smoke inside the building, but you could smoke outside. So there's a smoking area. So I walk outside, and I see all these smokers. And I said, "Hey, is there anybody here that's interested in quitting smoking?" Well, about half the people raised their hand. I said, "You want to do a little experiment?" They said, "Sure." I said, "Well, why don't you put your cigarette down for a second, and we'll walk inside so you don't have to stand out here in the cold." So I walked inside and asked everybody, on a scale of 1 to 10, where's your urge to smoke? They all said, "Well, it's a 10. Great. So I gave them the technique to use. Took less than 2 minutes. Then I said, "What's your urge to smoke now?" And everyone looked at each other in amazement. It was 2 minutes. And they all said, every one of them said, "I have no desire for a cigarette." I said, "Why don't you open up your cigarettes, take one out, smell it, and imagine how delicious and wonderful it's going to taste and how much you're going to enjoy smoking that cigarette." They all did, and every one of them virtually scowled, and they looked at that cigarette almost in disgust. They said, I just don't want the cigarette." Now, this technique is incredibly powerful. It eliminates phobias. It reduces stress and anxiety, panic attacks. Gets rid of post-traumatic stress disorder. Gets rid of grief or any negative emotion. And is incredibly powerful at completely eliminating the desire for an addictive urge. Any desire to eat food when you're not hungry, or an uncontrollable urge to smoke a cigarette. I was at a spa in St. George, Utah, the Green Valley Spa, years ago. And it was a very famous actress that was there. And she was there to lose some weight. We were chatting in the dining room. And I said, "Do you have any particular food that you crave?" She says, "Yeah, I crave butter pecan Haagen-Dazs ice cream." I said, "Oh, how often do you eat it?" She goes, "Almost every day. I love it. It's like an uncontrollable urge. Like I'm addicted to it." I says, "Right now, what's your urge?" She goes, "Well, I've been eating here at the spa for about 4 days. I'm like, craving it like big time." I said, "Let's do a little experiment." I said, "Stay here for a few minutes. I'll be right back." I ran out the back door, hopped in my car, drove down to the 7-Eleven. I found some Haagen-Dazs ice cream, butter pecan. I brought it back, went into the back room because I was in the dining room. So I went into the kitchen, got a bowl, scooped some of the ice cream out, put it in the bowl, went out to where she was sitting, put it right in front of her, and said, "There's some butter pecan Haagen-Dazs ice cream." I says, "Why don't you imagine how delicious it's going to taste?" And again, I watched her face contort, her breathing changed. I said, "On a scale of 1 to 10, how bad do you want that ice cream?" She says, "It's like a 15. I gave her the technique. In 2 minutes, her breathing changed, her face relaxed, her shoulders went back, she sat up straight in the chair, and she looked at me and said, "I don't want it now." I said, "No, imagine how delicious it would taste." She goes, "Seriously, I don't want it at all. What did you do?" She said, "You a witch doctor?" I says, "Well, I just used a little technique. You had a blocked energy pattern, and this technique got rid of it forever. It's never coming back." I said, "So let's see how long it lasts." Well, 6 months later, she called me from New York, and she says, "Hey, KT, I just want to tell you that I've lost 45 pounds, but I have to explain. I am not depriving myself at all. I have no urge to eat butter pecan Haagen-Dazs ice cream." I said, "Well, how much have you had since you left the spa?" She goes, "I haven't had any, not even 1 spoon." I says, "Was that a big struggle?" She goes, "No, it wasn't a struggle at all. I have no urge to eat it. The desire is 100% gone." Now, the good news is she can eat the Haagen-Dazs ice cream if she chooses to, but she has no uncontrollable desire to eat it. So same thing with cigarette smoking. If you want to quit smoking, if you're a member of the Insider Emailer Club, Brandy, make sure we send everybody both Roger Callahan's website, which is tftrx.com, Dr. Roger Callahan, and also Gary Craig, emofree.com. Those are the 2 places you can get the thought field therapy technique, it is incredibly, incredibly powerful. All right, let's go to some more questions.